We're going to talk about the ABS system in the MLB. We're going to talk about NIL and how it's ruining March Madness. We are going to talk about the NHL playoff push and who is my NBA MVP. Let's head right into it. I want to talk March Madness because that is the most prolific thing going on right now. Even though in the NBA and NHL, we are headed towards the last 10 games of the season, it's starting to heat up. But first, March Madness. NIL, is it ruining March Madness? Well, if you were to ask yourself this on the women's side, you would say absolutely yes. We yet again have 4 1 seeds that have made the Final Four, and the games that have led up to it in the Elite Eight have not been close at all. 20-point blowouts. I saw Michigan and Texas playing, and it was an absolute blowout the whole entire time. Not even close at all. On the women's side of it, you could realistically narrow it down to 12 teams and just have the top 3 seeds from each conference play. I think that it is really not something you want to be watching, and I get it. There's a lot of firepower, there's a lot of star power, but with NIL comes a lot of stacked teams and a lot of teams that really are just head and shoulders above the other teams. The round of 64 is a complete joke at this point, and more upsets are not going to happen. They're just not going to happen in the tournament. Yes, some have, but they were by lower teams. These 1 seeds are not going to get upset year in and year out, and I think the women have a lot to look forward to on how we can structure this in a better way that fits into this new system that has been implemented. And maybe it's making another tournament for these lower teams because that's what makes it more entertaining, and at least those teams getting a reward at the end of the day. Let's talk about the men's tournament. The men's tournament is falling subject to this as well, where we really have, again, a lot of 1 seeds making the Final Four. We have Michigan and Arizona in that respect. Duke missing out just barely, and UConn getting in. They definitely should have won that game. What I'd like to discuss with that game is at the end of a game like that, you can just hold the ball. There's not a lot to discuss about the end of the Duke-UConn game. Caden Bouger needs to hold the ball. And it doesn't need to get up court. Obviously, there was 10 seconds on the clock. You need to get it up court at some point. But they're going to get anxious. They're going to foul. They're not going to want 2 seconds to have a possession to make a shot. You gave them lots of time. They were able to get it together, and to not even get a hand up in that guy's face as he's shooting is absolutely absurd. And I think that this Duke team was more disappointing than ever, but that's all I'll say about that. Let's talk NIL. There's less Cinderella stories than ever, if there even is any anymore. We don't see teams like Loyola Chicago, like we did years ago, making a Cinderella run. And I don't think we will for years to come because they just can't afford to get those high-end players. You see more than ever this year, teams in the Big Ten who are more rich in that NIL respect, making runs like Michigan, Iowa beating a bunch of teams, Ohio State being very good. You're going to see more of that as this tournament moves on year after year. A team like St. Peter's made a huge run. What happened? Disassembled the team a year later with the transfer portal because those guys got better opportunities even though they weren't getting drafted. They were going to stay in college. And they got better opportunities somewhere else, so they left. And you don't get to follow their story anymore. Their story all of a sudden becomes that they are the 4th best player on a very good team. Are they still good? Are they still going to get drafted? Yes, but they are no longer having the firepower that they had when they were having that Cinderella run. As a Duke fan, I can totally attest to this, as we've had guys like Cam Bouger come through, who's going to get drafted, Cooper Flagg come through, who's going to get drafted, and Zion Williamson, who's drafted as well already. Yeah, I keep thinking he's still in college, but he's not still in college anymore, and I can't follow his story anymore. I think it's gotten exhausting for fans to see these blue blood schools that they are a huge fan of, and then a year later, the whole roster gets disassembled, and you can't follow their stories anymore. I just don't think it has the firepower it once had. I think that fans are less drawn in to all of this than they ever have been, and I think that the tournament going forward is going to have these problems, and it's not going to get the traction it once had. At one point, 2 years ago, the women's tournament had more traction, and for that exact reason, because the transfer portal was more prevalent than ever. You couldn't follow someone's story the way that you can in other leagues. This is going to be a problem for years to come. I don't like it. I think that the NIL kind of ruins March Madness, but I can accept the fact that it's making more complete teams, and we are seeing better play out of these teams because of how complete they are. You're no longer seeing one guy be the general for the team. There's more complete teams now and more teamwork involved to getting to the national championship. So I think that this has its pros, it has its cons. If you're a hardcore fan, you're going to like this. This is going to be great for you because you're going to see better play. But if you are just a casual fan tuning in and you wanted to see that Cinderella story, you're not going to like it. And I think most people that tune into March Madness and make brackets, I would say 80% of those people are those kind of people. So I think that you're losing a bit of your audience there, and maybe this isn't the right decision. But of course, at the end of the day, what brings in more money? And that is NIL being a thing in college. Let's move to the NHL playoff push. One of the top asked questions by people this year in particular, with the Central Division being so terrible, the Ducks leading it with 87 points. One of the most frequently asked questions is, does the NHL need to expand their horizons beyond Western Conference and Eastern Conference and making playoffs? My answer to this is a resounding no. I think it's an overreaction to this year where the Ducks lead with 87 points and a team like the LA Kings, who have been injury-riddled all year, are still in the playoff race with 76 points and still alive for a wildcard spot in that respect. How? I don't know. The West is not very good, and it's very top-heavy with teams like the Avs and the Stars. Meanwhile, in the East, 76 points would qualify for the third worst in the conference. To put that in perspective, it's with teams like the Maple Leafs and the Panthers, who have been injury-riddled all year and have not got the play that they've had in the past years, have had a terribly down year. So it's a completely different story in that conference and in that respect. But is it an overreaction to everything? I think so. You have to realize that the West has three great teams, the Avs, Stars, and I'll even throw in the Wild. And then the rest of the teams are having down years for different reasons. Let's just talk about the Sharks and Blackhawks, who the Sharks, they have Celebrini. They have a bright future ahead of them. And the Blackhawks have Bedard. As long as they're able to keep Bedard and we don't expect him to be traded away, I think that they have a bright future ahead of them as well, even though they are some of the worst teams in the conference. Think about another team like the Oilers, who have Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid. And their goaltending has been terrible this year, and yet they are still in the race for the playoffs. To put that into perspective, teams that have the same amount of points next to them include the Senators, Jackets, Red Wings, and Flyers, who would qualify to be above the Oilers in that conference and would land in fourth place. And a team like the Red Wings or the Jackets would be fighting for third place. These teams are very good in the East. I totally understand a lot of the arguments that are going around of it should just be the 12 best teams in the league. I understand the argument. I think that there's scheduling that's thrown in there. There's injuries that are thrown in there. And I think that we see this across all sports where some divisions are very bad. We see it every year in the NFL where one division is really, really bad and a team can get in when they're under 500. You're not going to see that in the NHL. A team that is under 500 is definitely not going to get in. Has it been done? Yes, but it's not done a lot with only 12 teams qualifying. And the NFL has 14 teams qualifying. I think that this is a really bad argument. It's just reactionary to what's going on. And this year is a resounding anomaly. This isn't going to happen every single year where we have so many teams that are playing bad. Other teams in the Western Conference that aren't having a good year include Winnipeg. They won the President's Trophy last year. They were the best record in the league. Now they're one of the worst teams in the league. They've completely fallen apart. And Connor Hellebuyck, although he had a good Olympics, is not playing good in net for them. Yes, he's facing a lot of pressure. I'll give him that. But not playing as well as he could have for them. And then the Vegas Golden Knights, who are usually good year in and year out, and at this point of the year usually have 90 points, but now sit at 82 and probably are going to miss the playoffs. I think people need to understand that these teams are not going to be as bad as they were this year next year. If this continued on a 3 to 5 year pace, that would be much different. We could have a different conversation if it continued to happen over and over again. Reactionary this year and think that you're just going to get the 12 best teams. There would be no point in conferences. There would be no point in division scheduling. There would be no rivals. You would have to blow it all up. And I don't think fans want that, and they never will want that. So let's let this happen this year. Let's enjoy the fact that the Avs and Stars are two phenomenal teams and probably the two best teams in the league right now. Let's let them battle it out in the West, and let's focus on the East, where we are going to get 6 elite teams that are probably going to be chasing 100 points by the end of the season just to qualify to get in the playoffs. That means we're getting 6 really, really, really good teams. This would not be a good decision to blow it all up. I think let this play, let it ride out. We are going to get a great NHL playoff no matter what. So let's let it happen.